Sabha Naqvi, and somebody who's or was till quite recently involved with cricket passionately, Sanjay Jha also. Dr. Ranganathan, what do you make of this BLM, symbol? I don't know. Some people have called it virtue signaling. Others people call it gesture politics. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, no, Rahul, you're right. I think this is a bit of virtue signaling. There are basically two issues here. Number one, politics of sports, and two, politics in sport. So let me very briefly delve into both one by one. On one, many may not know that the whole Take This Knee Act began actually as a symbolic protest against racism in American football specifically. The African-American or black player who thought of it, Colin Kaepernick, I think was his name, performed it in 2016 as a respectful gesture, and he put it so beautifully. He said, "I'm not disrespecting the national anthem, just taking the knee and not standing up. Think of it like a flag flying at half-mast." That's beautiful and poignant. Later on, it also became apparent that the symbolism of taking the knee dates back to, in fact, anti-slavery movement of the 1780s. So one thing is clear, the act is very noble and symbolic, and it is specific to racism in American sports. But since 2016, it has been used worldwide, and it has also been hijacked, unfortunately, by this violent BLM and Antifa movements. Now, the question to be asked is, why would Indian cricket players take the knee all of a sudden? Especially when there isn't racism in cricket, or certainly not to the extent there is in American football or soccer. I think wearing a black armband to highlight trampling of human rights in general through racism or terrorism or what have you would have been more appropriate than using a highly specific anti-racism act. Now let me come very briefly to the second point. Should you bring politics in sports? I think it is but natural. It happens naturally. Of course, politics is of many hues, but I'm talking of one that takes a principled, moral, ethical stand, not a tit for tat like what the USA and erstwhile Soviet Union indulged in by boycotting the Olympics for the Afghanistan and Grenada invasions respectively. Rahul, tell me, did we trade with apartheid South Africa for 40 years? At that time, one of the richest economies? No. Even though the guardians of human rights, America and Britain did. Did we play cricket with South Africa for 40 years, even though England did? So why didn't we? Because we took a principled, moral, ethical stand. We took a political decision. We didn't consider all the whites of South Africa as evil. In fact, we eulogized Dr. Christian Barnard and Nadine Gordimer. We were against their government and establishment. Now tell me, are we not against the terrorism perpetrated by Pakistan? Leave aside 4 wars or Mumbai blast or 26/11 or Pulwama or Dawood or Hafiz. Remember their death by 1,000 cuts preamble? Remember how they abducted and injured our envoy back in 2013? Remember how they orchestrated the 2008 attack on our embassy in Kabul? Remember when Prime Minister Imran Khan declared, quote, that his country trains terrorists? So why shouldn't we do a symbolic protest against terrorism? Something that affects us and something that the US never takes a knee for. These are questions that the BCCI and the ICC should have elaborated or deliberated before they took the knee.
Well, this pitch invasion, I could even say that next time we play Pakistan, we should take the knee for bringing religion into sport, because you saw the reaction of a large number of Pakistani cricketers, let alone, their political leaders and other wonky misfits. But I would take the knee. And what happens if we stop taking the knee? Do we become everything that we are not because we took the knee? So, there are many questions that arise, and we're going to break this argument down. Sabha Naqvi, Aarti Tikku, Dr. Ranganathan, it ties in with what Sushant Sareen was also saying. Before I open this up further, it's very important to draw a line. How far do you go back? I remember reading just a few days ago, German army held a parade. And a large number of people said, what do the Germans have to be proud about? They, of course, they played a dastardly role in the Second World War. Now, how far back do you go? Quintin de Kock, born after 1992, South African whites have in fact participated in a truth and reconciliation effort. And some people have said have at least been honest enough to pay their dues by coming out and, in an exercise of mass catharsis, apologize to their black majority. And today, in fact, if anything, there is reverse racism, and it is pretty much flagged in their face. A lot of white South Africans have had to also leave South Africa. So this question of drawing the line and then when do you call it off? Okay, so tomorrow if the Indian team doesn't take the knee, does it become racist? I mean, that'll be a question that'll be asked.
No, absolutely. So Shant has made some excellent points, and so have you, on this drawing the line. I think the way I see it, I can split it into two: contemporary drawing the line and historical drawing the line. So in contemporary, I think Aarti is also absolutely right. Where do you draw the line? I mean, if you're protesting about one thing, then others have legitimate reasons to ask, because there's so much high profile and there's so much publicity that is attached to the Indian cricket team, that many people who are victims would legitimately ask, why aren't you talking about the things that I'm suffering, like Kashmiri Pandit? Or you can say, why isn't the Indian cricket team highlighting what is happening to 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims in China, been stuffed in concentration camps and being fed pork? Nobody is protesting about that, least of all Pakistan. Imran Khan doesn't even acknowledge the plight of Uyghur Muslims. So much of Chinese power there. So why not you talk about this statement? Why not that? So you can't draw a line, because when you take one stand, others, legitimate victims, have a right to ask, why are you not talking about my plight? Number two, I think that's a very important point that Sushant raised. Where do you draw the line? For are the sins of I think the way he put it, are the sins of the forefathers to be passed on eternally to the children? And I think the point, it's a difficult question to answer, Rahul. Let me be very honest, because let's be fair. The sins of, quote unquote, sins of our forefathers are actually being passed on, because if you look at it one way, the students in the general category are paying for the reservations for those who are not in general category. So they are basically, they're accepting that, look, we are, quote unquote, suffering because our forefathers committed these sins. So it's a fact. It's a fact of life. The way I see it is, I think an apology is a must, because you need to realize that tremendous sins were committed by our forefathers, whoever those forefathers were, black, white, not so much black, but brown, white, or I would say the wealth of Britain and what the West is now is largely what Newton said. If I've been able to look further, it's standing on the shoulders of giants. No, these people were standing on the shoulders of millions of dead bodies. Britain owed us $45 trillion, when we became independent. So there has been mass looting. Do we acknowledge? I mean, Australians have apologized to the Aboriginals. Canadians have apologized to the Sikhs. I think apologies are a constant figure of life. I mean,
And what if, Ashutosh ji, let me bring you